Alright team, another Journey episode with yours truly and Mr. Ryan. I'm looking at him because we're sitting on the floor in our accommodation in a little tiny town in the bottom of the South Island called Timaru.
So we are getting it done while we travel around the country and knock off all these different expos that we've got lined up.
The show goes on, brother. Just like we were sitting in the car waiting to get on the car ferry to head over to the South Island. We are now in fact in the South Island, but it's fun. It's cool. We're in a nice little room. We had a beautiful little us day actually today, didn't we?
We could call it a mental health day.
Yeah.
An opportunity to reset, an opportunity to, I guess, ground back in after like just a lot of travel, you know?
Just a lot of travel, a lot of things. It was good. It was beautiful. It was semi-unplanned. We kind of knew where it was, but that's just how we go with life anyways. There was a kind of a plan to go to another springs, but it was closed, but we just kind of drifted through and ended up at Hanma Springs and ended up just getting a bit of massage, bit of hot pool, bit of steam room, and it had a little bit of play as well on the water slides, which was cool.
Just pumping myself with adrenaline after a massage was delicious. The body liked it. My nervous system was like, oh yeah, this feels good.
It did feel good. So yeah, it was a nice little mental health today, just in between all of our travels and what's going on, and that's in celebration of, well, an awareness of Mental Health Week here in New Zealand. So, you know, we're big proponents of helping people with, you know, I mean, mental health has such a big connotation to it, doesn't it? It means so many different things to so many people, and I guess we're just trying to do our bit to help people. Just help people, full stop.
Totally. And the beautiful thing with it is the business that we are creating. I guess every week's Mental Health Week.
Yeah.
You know, when we were talking about this just before, it only dawned on me an hour ago, because it hadn't been on social media a week, that it is Mental Health this week. An opportunity, I guess, for people to dedicate awareness around mental health, because it is so poignant. You know, we've got one of the highest rates of suicide in the world, predominantly young men that are doing it, and both you and I have been through the struggles of mental health, so that's essentially what we're going to talk about this week, is go into our own journey, our own struggles, our own overcoming of those darker times in our lives, and sort of on track with some podcasts that we've been listening to lately, and it being like the dropping into a mental health crisis or struggle, whether it's chronic or acute, being referred to as the Wasteland. Like if we can picture it in that way, it's a place in which we don't really know how we got there, but we are there, and essentially the journey through it is the journey out of it.
And making friends with the Wasteland, like getting to a point where you're not being afraid to go into the Wasteland. So I think I'll start at kind of my first myth shift, because I was thinking about this when we were driving yesterday, and I think mine is between 10 and 14. I don't think it was one particular event that ended the myth, but it was a 3 or 4 year process leading up to it, and I remember I was 10 years old, and we were in our family home, and my dad was a cop, and he ended up going through some real challenges and different things as you do in that type of role. So he ended up leaving the force, and they call it perfing out, which is a very derogatory term. It's to do with mental health actually, you know, but he ultimately chose to leave the police force. And then, being at 10 years old, you kind of still don't really know what's going on, and it's interesting reflecting on times when you were a kid, and especially through breath work and various other modalities. But the particular time that I'm about to talk about now was a time I remember I was just lying on the couch, and it was dark, and I was watching TV. Mum and Dad were in the other room, and I remember them coming out, and my sisters had gone to bed, and I remember them coming out, and they said to me, "Hey Mike, how do you feel about moving?" I said, "Move where?" They said, "Oh, we're going to move to Napier. Dad's got a job there, and it's a good job, and you know, you were born in Hastings, which is the same place, but I mean, I never grew up there. I was there till 5, and we moved to, basically moved to Tauranga, but And my first response was no. Like, I'm here with my friends, I'm here at school, like I had really been, it was the longest point of my life where I'd lived somewhere and really created community and friendships and done all my schooling. And I was just on that cusp of finishing intermediate and going into high school as well. So it was really, big time in a young man's life. And so I just remember this feeling of just something being ripped out from me. Like, I remember it just being like pulled. I was like, oh, nah, I'm being, that's not right. No, I don't want to do that. But ultimately it happened anyways. Your parents make your decisions that they think they're doing best for the family and all of that. And we ended up moving and went to Napier. So I went to school there, and we got a new house there, and I never really felt like I fit in there. And we were actually there doing an expo last year, and we're actually doing sitting in some meditation at a certain spot. And I remember dropping in to the version of me then, and not realizing at the time, but just how actually depressed I was in that whole time, which was really interesting. However, I found a couple of friends there, and one particular friend, but I was really, that was the point of my life where I really started to make up stories about telling other people about who I was, but it wasn't the truth, to protect myself and to really, I felt unsafe. I just didn't feel like, and the school I went to wasn't a nice school and all that sort of stuff. I got, picked on, and because I was a new kid, but I had to like create these stories about, what I used to do and all these sorts of things, but it never really, anyways. So that happened, but we were only there for about a year, and then we moved back to Tauranga. So this happened, so maybe I was a bit older than 10, maybe I was about 12, maybe I was even 12, anyways, regardless. And so when we moved back to Tauranga, all of that happened, and then my parents' marriage was just falling to bits. So the reason I started with that story is that's the first time that I felt like something being ripped from me. Went to this place, and then I could just feel the tension in my parents' marriage. I mean, always have, but it was horrid, and I wasn't having a good time. I started to really kind of rebel and different things like that. Went back, and I think within months, basically, I remember my mum and dad, they called us into their room, and they said, hey, we're separating. And it was just like, it was like, whoa, So the first myth of everlasting marriage, happiness, family, all that gets ripped. And so then I remember just being in the wasteland. Like, it's a great way to put it, because it was a very messy divorce. There was so much pain on both sides. All of the different things. I personally got used as a bit of a pawn in between mum and dad and all of that. But in that, I changed from the person on the path that I was, because at that time, like, I was very, like rigid at school. I was like do your work at school, like really, like don't be naughty and things like that, like all that. But then once that happened, I got given freedoms and different things, and like parents divorcing, it's like all of that. It all shifted. So hence the reason I'm telling that story is I feel like that's my first myth that got busted for me to go into my first wasteland so early on, and that I think really resounded in the fact that I left school when I was 15. I was in sixth form already, but like this, after the first term, I left school. They put me into, because you can't leave until you're 16, but they put me into this work experience program. I was doing electrician work and things, so I was doing some good stuff. And then I was like, no, I'm out. And so I just left. I didn't go back. And then I ended up getting a job at Toyota, doing some grooming cars and things like that, and working in the garage and all that fun thing. And I was like, well, if I'm earning money, I might as well move out. So I ended up I had my 16th birthday as a keg party at my house, so so that's definitely like my first entrance into the wasteland of like a myth busting, and to put that framework on it, to like understand that now, is quite cool, because that lasted quite a while of that.
I was going to ask that question. Do you feel like you actually entered that wasteland at 14 and didn't come out till you were 27 when you started to first like truly do work on yourself?
Nah, it was probably when I think it was when I came back. Actually, no, it was probably when I first got into my first, what would you say, long-term relationship, I would say, actually. Yeah. And we ended up like moving around, traveled to Canada together, and had a big breakup there. But it was like kind of like my first heartbreak as well, you know. So that was kind of like that point there, and then I felt it, and then I kind of drifted off into the creating the new myth, but then back into it again. And then when I came back to New Zealand to live for a year, I was like, I've got to get out of this hospitality scene. Like it is detrimental to my health, and it's you know. And so that's when I started getting into the gym, and I started to work out. And it was actually because of my sister's partner at the time. I moved back and stayed with them, and Brett was always at the gym, so I just started going with him, and so that was quite cool. That was really nice. And he's a few years older than me, and kind of like grounded me a little bit. And I just got into the gym, and so I got my personal training certificate. And so I think that was my next part out of the wasteland, was like, oh, I'm now stepping into doing something for myself. It was, I'm not working for anyone here. I've got to create my own business and working all of that. And so I ended up moving over to Perth and went straight into the gym, and I went through this good program until over the course of like 3 to 6 months, where it was like level 1 PT, level 2, but you still got paid a little bit to do floor time, so you weren't kind of like in survival mode. And Caleb, who's my brother-in-law now, he was actually my friend at the time. My sister and him hadn't met yet, but that was probably my next journey into out of the wasteland. Was like, okay, there's purpose. Something in this point, there's purpose. I'm creating my life now. Okay, I'm developing skills. I did hundreds of consults over and over again, so I could like nail it. And I really learned like NLP practices and how to ask people questions, and just really like how to like ask open-ended questions so people could answer me. And I just did that, and so I think that's really been brought forward to why I'm good at what I do now, because there was a good baseline of that, and that was great. And then from there, then my daughter was born when I was like 27, and then that just like boom, that really pushed me
back into the wasteland.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, for the first bit it didn't, but then it did. Because I was like, wow, I'm trying to like navigate all of this.
You were holding on.
Yeah,
holding on to what you knew, and then eventually just got dragged back in.
Yeah, but I mean that got me really configured of being like, okay, well, I'm not going out on weekends anymore. Okay, well, I'm not taking steroids anymore because I'm not doing bodybuilding comps anymore, and so that switched on a new myth that hadn't really started to be created, But then it was into the wasteland again.
Yeah. Well, different level of purpose, I suppose.
Totally.
Yeah, and I suppose when it comes to navigating any aspect of it, because there'll be multiple times that we probably get thrown into it, either chronic or acute in our life. So, acute is just the minor aspect of it. These month-long or even week-long or even day-long episodes, where the chronic aspects may last 10 years, 5 years, 2 years. And it really depends on the person, really depends on the time in their life, really depends on the thing that breaks them.
Yeah. So that's been my in and out of the wasteland, really.
What do you think recently? What's the most recent time you've sort of entered that space lately?
I don't think lately it's been an actual wasteland.
What about post maths?
Was that a wasteland, or was that just a post reaction of just being in such different realms?
But you could call it that, right? Like, because it's just a chronic episode.
It was a shake-up.
Yeah,
for sure.
But you've just learned the tools and strategies to be able to get out of it.
Yeah, well, I allowed myself to go into it. Like, I'm not afraid of being into the wasteland anymore.
Perfect.
It was
that's
like
sort of where I was getting at.
It was like, that's it's the realm we all must go. So let's fucking get to know it very well.
Yeah, totally.
I know it very well.
part of the human experience is to be able to navigate it and to not be fearful of it.
Yeah.
To not to be fearful of the disorders or the conditions that are connected with it, whether it's depression, anxiety, psychosis, because it's inevitable. There's always going to be things that trigger us or trigger it, whether it's death or grief or
but the purpose
loss.
definitely keeps you going, of like whatever it is that you're trying to create, I mean, like right at this very moment, like there's more things that have been printed about me in the media because of what I'm doing. It's like, if they could send you into the wasteland very simply, but it's like, hey, don't attach any meaning to it because it doesn't matter. It is what it is. It's the gift of whatever is in front that is happening, that is just trusting in the divine process that is being led. And so, it's all good. Yeah.
Totally, brother. And I guess it's the sort of thing we want to get to. It's like it's normal. Like if you are feeling or struggling or suffering through things, it is normal to be in these spaces. And the journey is just navigating through it, like being willing to ask for help or support, or as you say, like trusting divine guidance, knowing that there is a way out. Not falling on vices or things that simply just numb you to the pain, but it actually allowing yourself to go through the journey of overcoming the pain so that you can come out the other side.
Share your wasteland stories.
My wasteland stories. So I was reflecting on it as you were talking about being younger and a child, and as I was sort of going through that, although I had a challenging childhood, particularly around like schools and being bullied and navigating anger and going to like multiple different primary schools and high schools, I don't think there was any point in those times that I was depressed or like fully in a wasteland. I was just navigating challenges. I think the first time that I've really like I think
but also as well, you don't have to be depressed to be in a wasteland. I don't feel they have to go hand in hand.
For my myth, this is where we're at. Yeah. I can understand what you're saying. Totally. So navigating that and then coming to a point of being like, that really threw me.
Sorry, bro.
yeah.
It was just a thing dropped in.
Yeah.
I was like, sorry, man.
Yeah, totally. So being in that place and being in that space of like, I guess being close to it, but not being fully in it. Like having challenges and struggles, but I guess not letting them overcome me or like not fully being in it. And then it wasn't till I was like 22 where I guess I got ripped into it really quickly, and there was like a 6-month period when I didn't leave the house simply because of fear of psychosis and like fear of hearing voices in my head, fear of social situations, fear of life, I suppose, was probably the biggest thing. And that was all triggered by a conversation that we've had before on the podcast, and that was around the use of psychedelics at a festival. And that was like one thing that triggered me, and I like remember the moment where I went from sort of holding it together and sort of being in this limbo between two worlds, and then being at work and just breaking down in tears for no reason whatsoever, just getting overcome and overrun with emotions, because as I was sort of navigating that, it was still hard to, I guess, communicate what I was going through with people around me, because people were still drinking, people were still smoking, people were still doing drugs, and I myself was still doing it as well. And then I think it was like on a Monday, probably after a really heavy weekend, where I guess it all just came to an end. And then I just ended up leaving work, didn't even tell anyone, drove home, got into the shower and probably spent like 2 hours in the shower just like in tears, not really knowing what I was going through, not really knowing what that was. And that sort of kicked off like 6 months of not really leaving the house, And as I sort of just navigated through it, and at the same time, I don't know why. I don't think I knew how to ask for support, but I didn't speak to my parents about it. I didn't get counselling until I got to a point where I guess it just got too much, and I started to research about what depression was, and started to go on is it Youthline, one of the Youthline websites, and was literally just about to book in a counsellor, and then just got this overwhelming feeling like there's more to it than this. Like, booking a counsellor isn't the answer. There's something bigger to it. And then I just went into YouTube and Googled how your thoughts create your reality. And in that, I watched a 5-minute video. It's actually not there anymore because I tried to find it a few years back, from a page called Spirit Science, and it was just about how your thoughts create your reality. And that just had it was just a moment of light in complete darkness, and being okay, I can orient myself towards that point. I can see within that moment that there's potential for me to get out of this, and it's not going to be by going to see a counsellor or getting drugs that are going to numb it. Essentially, it's getting to whatever that light was further along was going to be the journey out of it. And then that essentially led me into, I guess, the spiritual journey, or the journey of understanding who I am, and probably a journey that I was still on, and am still on. How I got to the end of the tunnel, who knows? Yeah. So that's the beauty of it, I suppose. For me, it was just a lot of pain, but a lot of suffering in silence. Even when I had these people around me, a lot of it was that. Because even when there was a few moments where I tried to communicate how I was feeling to the people around me, but they didn't know, understand, or have the capacity to even know how to navigate that. They were potentially either going it through themselves, or it was just something that something they didn't know how to communicate. And I suppose that's pretty relevant.
How do you think your relationship with asking for help is now?
My relationship for asking for help now, as I say, we're still getting to the end of the tunnel, for sure.
Constant journey, man.
Yeah, totally.
It's the most vulnerable thing we can do as humans, especially as men as well. Just asking for help. It's definitely something I've seen in you that you struggle with, and I struggle with as well. It's the only way I see it. Mm-hmm. It's a curse, and it's just such a horrible curse. And I guess that's why it's a big part of showing up here weekly, because if someone can just if I had what we spoke about, something in my life years ago, to listen to it, I would have been holy shit, fuck, there's people who haven't got it worked out, but they're doing all right, because again, just on while you were talking towards the end there and reflecting on moving into I don't want to go get numbed out with drugs. Well, I ended up doing that. I went to the doctor and they put me on antidepressants, and I was on them for 3 years, and I got to a point where I need to take myself off. These are just horrible things. And then there was a real wasteland after that, because now you got to feel the things.
Huge.
Yeah.
And then that's why it can be so challenging as well, because it's once you choose to make that decision to get off the drugs that have been numbing you, it's a lot's going to come up, and then you've got to navigate that without the vice of jumping back onto it, something that would be so simple and easy.
Yeah. Where do you think these things come from in you, man, over the course of your life, to be where do you think that thing came from, and be no, there's something more to going into counselling, or what to look for, what to search for, Where do you think that comes from in you?
I think that specific moment was divine guidance.
Yeah, bro.
That was divine guidance.
Yeah.
I reflect on the the moments when I was like navigating being fucking deep in like a drug psychosis, and reflect on the spaces that I intentionally go to with the use of plant medicines now. And it was actually only just this week, after listening to this podcast on the Wasteland for the first time, I was like, man, it was actually the exact same place. I just didn't have the setting was just all wrong, and the people around me, when I actually reached out and I was like, hey man, like, I'm not okay. Can you guys get me out of this festival? Because like this environment isn't working for me. And everyone was like, oh no, like it's all good, like blah 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 blah. So I just had to stay in it for like another 3 days, you know, and just navigate
the trauma.
And yeah, just navigate, but like not being in trauma, just like being in a psychotic state, like being between two worlds. And even I can remember the days, even the festivals were over, and just being numb to it, because I'd obviously just had to pull or detach myself, and then just being in between these two worlds for a really long time. And I say that like 6 month period, and then it wasn't till that like divine guidance came in that I was like, oh, okay, I can actually take action and steps to get out of this now. And then it just led me on the journey. I found Boxy, which gave me a reason to no longer drink. It gave me like a viable excuse around a community or group of people that all socializing was around alcohol. You know, that's normal in New Zealand, right? Especially when you're 21 years old. There's not many other social interactions. So for me, it was great because I could engulf myself into boxing and then have an excuse and a reason not to drink, instead of just being like, hey, look, I'm giving up drinking, because that's a fucking hard thing to do when you're 20 years old. You know, because then what's your place in the world, right? Then how do you actually navigate that? Who are you going to hang out with? Because there's not really many people doing that. But it gave me an viable excuse. It gave me purpose. It gave me meaning. It helped me get my physical health and self on track. And then while I was doing that, every day I just kept watching these spirit science videos and like learning about it, just taking on this knowledge and wisdom that other people were passing down to me. Yeah.
Do you think that ultimately it all came down to you as well? Like you had to take the steps into your life to make some changes?
Yeah, totally.
You know?
Totally.
Because I was the same, you know, in that point where I was, you know, so after I had Bella, and then me and her mum went together, and I was in Perth, and all of the pattern pulling that came from between me and her, and tried to make it work, and all this stuff, and I just got into a spiral, man. I got into the Wasteland, you know, big spiral, because I had just shattered another myth instantly of how a father and family are meant to be, you know, of like this thing.
And then it also goes into like the abandonment that you probably would have felt when your family broke up as well.
Yeah.
You know, at a very new age, you're like, fuck, I've got to leave.
Yeah.
But, you know.
Yeah, totally, man. And so I just got into further depth of depravity. Like I was just drinking so much all the time. I wasn't focusing on my businesses. I was, you know, running gyms, and I was just like this total falsity of what I was doing, you know, like, and then I was speaking to a friend of mine who's another personal trainer about it. And again, this is why I asked that question, was it you, Step? Because I then had to ask him, because I saw him go to a therapist and get a different grasp on life. So I asked him, we're out the pub having beers, and I'm like, hey man, like, can you like, what was the process you went through? Like, I didn't know anything about it, and it was only because he had gone through a process, and he was able, and we were close enough, and he was open enough to be able to talk about it,
To share that with you.
yeah
And it's vulnerable.
Yeah,
Which is
and he's an ex-paratrooper, man. Like, he was like 20 years older than me. A really nice guy, really good guy, and you know, a lot of demons. And so he's like started to go through it, and you know, we used to have just like chronic drinking sessions together. We would just like get blackout drunk, but because we were just both didn't know how to deal with what we're going through in our lives. He was dealing with a lot of stuff with his kid and his current partner and things like that. And I was like, okay, this is just what I know to fall back on. And anyway, so he put me in touch with his therapist, and so I went down and had a go with him, but like it didn't work out as well. So that was like the biggest, like I went to a first session and went through it, and then it just didn't quite click, like I was going in there. I remember this one time I was just so like wound up, and I just was like, I just need to get there, and I got there, and he like, I think maybe he cancelled on the way or something like that, like, and then I was just like, I'm fucking being let down again. Like, I've only just started thinking about this like right now. Like, I'm like, fuck, I'm being like, no, I just need this. So I went to the doctor, and I'm like, because in Australia they've got a lot better mental health, public mental health plan.
Yeah.
So if you go to the GP there, you do this mental health exam, and basically they give you 10 free
counselling sessions.
Yeah, it's a therapist session. It's not even counselling. You get 10, and then you can go back and get 5 more.
Perfect.
And so I was telling the doctor about this thing, and so obviously I went to the doctor that my friend had went to, because he sounded like a good guy, and he was actually a good guy. He was an older guy, and he was like real sympathetic, and that was the first time I was like, what's going on here? Like, I had to talk to somebody about like whatever's happening. I don't even know what was going on.
Yeah, totally.
And like I knew what was going on, because there was so much stuff going on. Like, I just didn't know how to deal with it all, but I didn't know what it was. And so I did this exam in the thing, and you circle on a line between 1 and kill myself. Like, where do you sit? And you're like, basically. Anyway, so he adds them up. He's like, okay, cool, you qualify for the 10 sessions. And he's like, well, I'm going to put you on some medication, and you're going to take this amount in this week. And I was just like, whatever, as long as it helps me from fucking feeling like this, I don't care. So I went and got the prescripts and started taking it that day. Bang. And then went to the therapist, and he was good. He was the first one actually sat there, and he taught me about different tapping methods, and he gave me some hypnotherapy stuff, and started to talk things through. But like there was this is the thing. Here's a really interesting thing with him. So I started to feel better going through the process, like, and the medication was obviously doing its thing, and and I was like, oh, okay, I'm starting to handle this a little bit better, and all that. And I was going over to Bali with a couple of friends of mine, and he was going to be in Bali for a couple of weeks. I was like, oh man, we should catch up, like have a beer or something. And he was like, no, I can't do that. I'm like, well, why not? Like, we're in here sharing, like, it's all good. He's like, no, it's against this whole law code. And I was like, even like right then I was like, that is weird. Like, how can you go be in this situation of like healing and sharing and like, what, you can't even have a beer outside, like whatever. And so I was like, oh, okay. And so I got actually quite put off by that. So I went and found another therapist, and she was really good too. She like worked with like guys from the mines, and like there was kind of more a specialty about kind of guys like me.
Lads.
Yeah, and so she was the first one that really put me into the notion of the 2 different nervous systems. And I had started to read books, and I'd started to watch YouTubes, and it was just like self-help stuff, like really entry-level stuff, like, having motivational speakers. As soon as I wake up in the morning, I put a motivational speaker on, and I just listen to it, and I read The Miracle Morning by Hal Elrod, and I was just like, all right, I'm going to start doing some stuff in the morning. And so that was it. So that's a long-winded part of, like, back to my question to you is, did you find that, like, the steps you make, you had to do by yourself? You had to, like, but then there was still a divine guidance somewhere directing you, and, it ultimately still just came down to what you were doing.
Yeah, totally. And I think, although I'd never had psychologists as guides, there was like many guides on my journey, because I'd been going to an osteopath since I was like 7 years old. They were always a little eclectic. Anyway, I still go to osteopaths now, and so there was always like guidance from somewhere, but I guess not so deep in like the psychology realms. A lot of that it was just self-education. I don't think I've actually ever spoken to a psychologist before. I'm just reflecting. Nah. I've only ever spoken to 2. And that was about my partner, actually. Yeah. But always been to like guides, and there's always been guides in my life. Whether they were divine or whether they were like in the physical realm, or whether they were like mentors, because it was even when probably the second time I like shattered a myth was when I gave up being an engineer and chose to study naturopathy, and that was when I was in India, and that was after my first 10-day Vipassana and then having my first breathwork experience. And then throughout that breathwork experience I spent like 2 weeks working with 2 weeks? Yeah, 2 weeks working with a Swami, and just going to see him every single day. And I spend 10 hours with him every single day, and he'd just read his books, teach us about energy work, teach us different forms of meditation. He never even spoke about the form of trauma release breathwork he did. All over those 10 days, it was just something that I seen as an offering. So same again, right? And when I first booked that, I didn't actually book it for myself. I booked it for my partner, and she was like, "No, I'm not doing that." So I was essentially gifted myself the experience. So yeah, never like the Western route. I don't know. I don't know. It's never really been the things that have like drawn me in. It's always been like more holistic, more Eastern medicine paths that I've taken me down. Like even when I came back was where me and Van met, was in a Reiki class, and we'd just turn up every single week, and I probably did that for nearly two years straight. On a Wednesday, we'd go in and would just do group energy and Reiki sessions on each other. And there was some wild stuff that used to go on there, because there was a group of like 20 people and everyone had a gift, right? And the lady who ran the class is actually her name's Di. She's like the fairy godmother that brought me and Van together, and she even came to our reception for our wedding. You know, that was the impact that she had in our life. And she just created a container for everyone to bring their own gifts. And so there was like so many different modalities just being used and utilized, and different things. I think I seen like 4 exorcisms over that 2-year period of her just working her magic and doing her thing. It was quite cool actually, like wizard school. Loved it.
Yeah, it's a lot deeper than what I thought we were going to go this episode, but it's beautiful. It's just unraveled itself.
It has.
Yeah, but that's the journey of, you know, mental health, spiritual health, the soul, the body. It's all must be heard. It doesn't matter where and how. It's just the poignancy of taking those first steps, and knowing that if something is just not feeling alignment, you know, like it's, I guess like the presence is all around us, you know, like, and if you really want to make a change and really make a shift, then the opportunities will be in front of you somewhere. You just got to step into them. And like, if you've got to start down the Western route, if you've got to start going to your doctor and just go that route, is what it is. You go down the more Eastern route like you. It's great.
There is no right nor wrong.
No.
It's just
it's whatever's accessible.
Yeah, it's whatever accessible and whatever resonates with you, and don't be willing to try and get something wrong.
Yeah.
Just allow yourself to actually take steps for yourself, and if you can't do it alone, then ask for support. If you see friends that, like, because I don't know, it can be really, really hard when you're in the depths of it to reach out, you know, and to even connect the dots that there's probably, more likely than not, someone in probably a very close vicinity to you, whether it's a friendship, a work colleague, or a relationship, or a family member, a cousin, a relative, could be your next door neighbor, that struggles with mental health and probably sees that you're struggling too, but is either waiting for you to ask or doesn't have the capacity to ask themselves. So, you know, share it with people. Like, if you need support, tell people, and if the first person doesn't listen, then tell someone else, or take action to book something in for yourself so that you can find a space or place to talk to people about it. That's probably the biggest thing.
Yeah, and it's just saying that. I think the biggest takeaway is just booking something in, taking the action, because within the action is actually the healing. It's not necessarily the outcome of the action, it's actually the action, because you're building up the ability that you are doing something for yourself. Yeah And whether it and like whether that be just like a 5-minute walk, a few times a week, if you're doing nothing now, just to kind of move the body, get that happening as well. Maybe. I don't. It's just along those lines. Yeah.
There is no right way.
Nah.
There is no right way. And you say, like, it's all part of your myth, it's all part of your story. There's a journey to come from it. Like, it is a hero's journey. It is something that you're going to overcome. It is something that is going to teach you a lot. And more often than not, when people make it through, it's like they're inspired to help other people. That's how beautiful the journey can be. Because if we didn't have those struggles, would we be here right now having this conversation? No,
Absolutely
probably not.
not.
'Cause we wouldn't have ended up at 24 Norrie Street in Beta, going through and deepening our own journey and understanding of how to support people through this shit and how to support ourselves through this shit. Because 3 years ago we were still both deep in the shit.
Big time. Yeah. And it's only been 3 years, which is, it's minuscule in the amount of a lifetime, and the fast evolution that is that. It's pretty incredible. And what was cool about listening to Eric Godsey, and he had a really good metaphor. I really enjoy metaphors. Metaphors help me like drop into things, and it's about and this is what I gathered from it. It's about actually the importance of sharing your myth, sharing your story about being in the wasteland for others to hear. It's like being a lifeguard and watching someone struggle and you have the ability to help them. So this is what the shimmer is. It's the ability to be able to get our stories and our Dharma artistry out, and whatever that is, because that's what's going to save the world. It's not the warrior anymore. It's not, it's the artist. But not in the context of just painting or any. It's the artistry of life.
Totally. Can I read you something
Please.
That's on my phone? You are a Dharma artist. You have a role to play. You can find the way, otherwise the way cannot be found. The world is on fire, people are drowning, and you can save them. It's time to wake up, grow up, and show up. You have two choices: be criticized or abort the mission.
It's sexy. Love that. I've seen that on it's on your lock phone, on your lock screen.
It is on the lock screen.
Did you write that?
I took it from what he had said and rewrote it.
Yeah, cool. So your interpretation of the learning.
Yeah, for sure.
Love it. Yeah. Yeah. Definitely got more to add. We both do. We've got it there.
There's only so many things we can do at once.
I know, and that's okay. It's there. It will emerge beautifully as the phoenix does. But all the gold is right here at the moment within these 88 episodes. There's so much gold. It's beautiful.
88 modules.
There is. It's amazing. I can't wait for my daughter to be old enough to be able to listen to these. She can read her emails I've been writing her, all the things.
It is a beautiful life, brother.
Yeah, it is. Thank you for sharing, brother. Thank you for being so open. I feel that in the room. It's nice.
The dark, dingy, cigarette smelling.
But isn't
motel.
that so us, bro? Hey?
This is the wasteland. For people in rooms either side of us, they could be in their wasteland right now.
Yeah,
You
absolutely.
know? And this is our prime.
Because the external has no reflection on what it is that the Dharma is.
Totally.
Yeah, we're here to talk to as many people as possible over the next 3 days and offer them some of our own beautiful plant medicines that we've created so we can help them get better sleep. Because if you get better sleep, you can think clearer. And when you can think clearer, you can not only think through your problems, you can feel through them in a better way because you're not reacting, you're not becoming the emotion, you know, as much. So you've got a little bit more space within yourself, you know, and then we've got a beautiful product that they can have during the day that helps bring the anxious feelings into a little bit more minuteness. So again, they've got more space and they've got the more ability to have a little clarity in their mind where they're not getting razzed and dropping, and you know, all the beautiful mushrooms that we've created as well and all the things happening. It's
as you say, the products are just the top of the funnel.
Just the top of the funnel.
The lead into the state change program for people that may be in the wasteland or people that are wanting to navigate this world with a little bit more purpose, to understand health holistically, to understand the importance of sleep, to understand the importance of emotional regulation, and then to ultimately guide them through an experience that most people wouldn't have otherwise, and that's to be guided through a trauma release breathwork session or a rebirthing breathwork session. It's like, you know, that's the beauty in why we're here, is to get people to the bottom of the funnel.
That's it, brother. Beautiful. Well, if everyone listening out there, if you've got challenging times, or you are in the times of where you don't know which way is up, you don't know where to go, your head is fucking swimming, your heart beats out of its chest, and you just feel anchored to the floor and like you can't move, and your whole body is inflamed and swelling. The only reason I describe it so well is because I've been there many times. So reach out to someone, take a little action step on doing something for yourself, and it doesn't have to be huge, it doesn't have to be step 10, or it could even just be shooting Ryan and I a message as well. Same thing. We've got tools online that you can breathe to, which are very simple. You could go back and listen to different episodes of this podcast to give you more insights into different ways of thinking about things. Or you could even, you know, start by going to your GP, and who doesn't matter where you start, because it just, as long as you make a start and you stay with us, that's all that matters.
Totally. I hope, brother. Well, thank you as well for being so open, being so vulnerable, for sharing your stories. I'm sure it's going to be poignant for anyone that's listening.
Yeah, brother. Beautiful. Love you, man.
Love you too, brother.
And we love all you guys. Thanks for listening.